Hi everyone, I'm taking you today to Paris now for the Grand Chess Tour where Vishy Anand is playing. What a first day for Anand. He scored 5 out of 6. He won 2 of his games, beating Nepomniachtchi and Anish Giri and drawing against Caruana. There's just no way you can guess which tournament Vishy would do well and where he wouldn't. Recently, the second leg of the Grand Chess Tour, which was in Zagreb, he performed horribly. I mean, he made 9 draws and lost 2 games. That was a classical event. And it feels like in Rapid and Blitz, he should be doing worse because, he's 49 and he's playing against all these youngsters. And when it's about speed, age plays a critical role. Well, it doesn't seem so. So here, just a picture of Anand. This is, he's playing against Anish Giri, and we are going to look at that game right now. Now, as you can see in the position, it's black to move. Anand is playing with the black pieces and he has an extra pawn here. So he has good winning chances and he makes the most obvious move here, which was to play f5. And now the question to you is, how should white defend in this position? Do you think that white can hold this position or not? Okay, so I would be very happy if you said, yes, white can hold this one because of this pawn here. This is the pawn which is actually cramping two of black's pawns on g7 and h6, and this is the reason why the extra pawn over here on b5 doesn't really make itself felt. But white has to play carefully here, and you can see that taking on f5 is absolutely bad because I take and then the h5 pawn falls and black is winning. So white has essentially two moves here. I thought I had found a beautiful puzzle because f3 or king g3, that is the question. And then when I was asking Amruta, my wife, about this position, she said, well, if I was white here, I would simply give a check. And I said, yes, even this move is completely possible. Rook b8 check. If you found this move excellent, king h7 and now f3 or even king g3 is fine, because now after takes, the king is so horribly placed on h7 that you will have to play g6. So let's take a sample line, rook g5, king f3, g6. Okay, I can give a check, but I can even take. And now we reach this position, it's completely drawn. I mean, there is absolutely no way in which black can make progress here. This pawn is too weak and the game will end in a draw. So rook b8 check. If you found this move, well done. The other option here is f3. And now this move, this is what Anish Giri played, and this looks most natural because you want to keep the integrity of your structure. You want to keep your pawns intact. So Anand took here on g4, and now Anish could have played check, get the king out. But no, he took on g4. Okay, I'm just removing the colors from now. And now if you play rook to g5 here, then I can give a check, king up, and then king f3, and we reach the same position which we discussed. So Anand first said, I'll play king to g8. Now it seems like black is completely winning, because let's assume white plays king to f3. Now I go rook g5. I have defended g7, I have defended b5, and I'm all ready to get my king out. So if cut me, and then I just bring my king over and I'm winning this position. Okay, we'll come to it in the game, but this is essentially the idea. So when Anand plays king g8, now Anish in the game played rook to b7, but this is a bad mistake, because after rook g5, king f3, king f8, this is game over. The main reason being that this rook is so beautifully placed. Black has two weaknesses, g7 and b5, and this rook defends both of them perfectly. So now the king can go like king f4, king e8, black king can go anywhere he wants and white can do nothing about it. And then the pawn was pushed, the rook comes back, and finally the king joins in, goes to the other side, and here Anish resigned the game because g4 and h5 both are falling. From this, what you realize is that when black played king to g8, it was very important not to allow this move next rook g5 when black has everything that he wants. It's important to give a check first. Rook b8, good move. King f7, now check again. King f6, check. You're going to check all the way through, and if he goes king g5, you have check and you take on g7. This position should be a draw. And if he goes king to e5, this is again a draw because after rook g6, now I'm threatening to take on g7. So rook d7, and now comes the very important move g5. Not rook to b6 because after king f4, these two pawns will fall. So g5, and yeah, taking here doesn't make sense because I take and the b5 pawn is falling. So you have to play rook b7. I take rook here, and after b4, my rook can come back, rook c6, b3, and I am in time because even if the black king comes, I can escort my pawn here, and this is just a draw. So even after making so many mistakes, Anish still had a chance to draw if he would have given this check here. As it turns out, he played the very natural move rook to b7, and this allowed rook g5. And this is a very important concept in rook endgames. When you have two weaknesses, and if the rook can defend both of them, okay, it's not exactly a weakness, but you can say two pawns that the rook can defend, then the king is really free to do the damage. So keeping this in mind, I feel that in this position, when you are given a question how should white continue, instead of playing f3, you should have played the move king to g3. The reason being that after takes, now this g5 square, which is the critical one, can be controlled with the f pawn. Optically, it doesn't look good because let's say after this check, the king is pushed to the side, the h5 pawn is weak and isolated, the f2 pawn is isolated, but the thing is after f4, black has to move now, and so if he moves here, the b5 pawn falls, and if he moves to the side, let's say rook f5, king g4, rook c5, then now you play rook to b7, and there is no way that this king can roam freely or across the board like it did before. So in this way, here white could have easily held the draw, and this is how I feel learning endgames is really very nice way to learn is through the games of the top players. If you look at them carefully and understand and analyze them, you can learn a lot. And this is the reason why we have introduced this book. It's called Tragicomedy in the Endgame, and this is by Mark Dvoretsky, as you can see here, and it says instructive mistakes of the masters. Now this book is all about games of players who are very strong, and from their games Mark Dvoretsky has taken positions which are tragicomedy in nature. So this is the index. You can see swimming in theory is chapter 1. So which are the theoretical mistakes that all the players have made, and in this you have chapters like rook and pawn in your half of the board, rook and rook's pawn versus rook, Laskar's idea, extra pawn on the flank, rook against pawns, rook versus minor pieces, and then so on. And when you go to chapter 2, it's about the king in the endgame, the activity of the king, the shouldering and everything. Part 3 is about strength of pawns. Part 4, chapter 4 is Zugzwang. Chapter 5 is in search of salvation. There you have the fortress, stalemate, perpetual checks. Chapter 6 is about tactics. Chapter 7 is peace play. 8 is technique, and 9 is premature end to the struggle, where there are some resignations which were not called for and the players still resigned the games. So this is a book that I would definitely recommend. I'm going to put a link in the description below and you can check it out. Of course, Dvoretsky's Endgame Manual, this is the book I have always recommended if you want to learn the endgames along with Silman's Endgame course. So Silman's Endgame course is a little bit for people who are beginning their journey into the chess endgames. Once you have a good handle on them, I would recommend Dvoretsky's Endgame Manual. And these books are theoretical in nature, you learn the theory. But if you look at the Tragicomedy, here you have the practical aspects, because these are the games of the masters. Well, here's a Tragicomedy that we just saw right now between Anish Giri and Vishy Anand, which was won by Anand. Today he will play 3 more games in the rapids rounds 4 to 6, and we hope that he does well. Thank you very much.